I would be careful about a couple of things. I mean, first, I think it should be, about the, the current status of the bridge project and financing and also plans moving forward. I would suggest that to the extent there is going to be involvement by the GPA in this meeting, there should be a letter outlining that. And I would caution against having the GPA discuss issues that have been raised by the county or are what I'll call open issues in dispute with the county that have already been turned over to council. I just generally think it's not a good idea to have clients talking about those things when there's been a threat of litigation, particularly one emanating from the county here. And that would include topics like the county code and whether there's an issue with the P3 agreements and compliance with the county code. So those would be my kind of high-level comments about this. I do think it would be wise to put that in writing if the GPA decides to be part of this meeting. A couple other related comments, just so the board is aware, as I think John mentioned, I did make Krieger aware of this request. Spoke briefly to Krieger's counsel, and didn't ask them to do anything or suggest that they take any action. I just said I don't have a directive from my client, but I wanted Krieger to be aware of this request, so they are aware of it.
Okay.
If I may supplement briefly what Kevin said, the documents that Councilman Heckman requested are very voluminous. Number one. Number two, they cover, based on what's written just in his letter, but they arguably would cover both privileged and non-privileged documents. And to go through a review of the documents that he requested, to redact, to segregate out what's privileged and non-privileged, would be yet another very, very substantial expenditure of time and money. My recommendation to the board is that, as an alternative to doing that, but still trying to be accommodating, I have, as part of the response to the right to know law requests that we've received over the last few months, part of our work was such that we were able to put all of the documents that were appropriate for transmittal to the requesters on CDs. And we've kept, of course, the CDs, and my recommendation is, in fact, my secretary has already burned duplicate copies of those CDs, and I am prepared to transmit them, or if somebody else wants to, transmit them to Mr. Heckman. And I think they will be, the documents on those CDs will be very, very responsive to the Finance Committee's document request. What's the documents that are on the CDs have already been thoroughly reviewed by my partner, Barbara Hollenbach, in connection with the right to know law request. The appropriate redactions have been made primarily for privileged information. So I'd like to think our doing the GPA doing that, as I said, would be both be an indicator of responsiveness, while at the same time not resulting in having to go through a very, as I said, cumbersome process.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with giving them any of the documents on the CDs. I think that should serve the purpose of what they're looking for. With respect, my opinion is this: with respect to looking for, they asked for someone to explain the status of the project. Well, that's the job of Benish. I mean, if they want an update on the project, and this is truly them wanting an update on the project, then Benish can go and give them an update on the project. I mean, I look at the timing of this thing as a little suspect. I'm happy to give them I'm happy to give them the documents that were already prepared. As far as I'm concerned, they had the ability to come to a meeting. They didn't come to a meeting, to our meeting specifically. And then the very next day, after I had a handful of council members, some of which were on the finance committee, it's a little suspect them to wait one day and then send me a letter instead of coming to a meeting. If they wanted a question answered, and this goes back to when Charles Derdinger was in a room with us at a project meeting and brought up that they had questions. That was a month ago. And I said, if there are questions, just get them to us. And he failed to do so in any manner. And then he came to our meeting, a couple weeks ago, and did the very same thing. Oh, there's questions. Okay, well, what are the questions? Well, we'll get those at a later date. Well, okay. Again, if they truly have a question, and this is like a business-related matter, ask the question, you'll get an answer. What I'm saying is, I personally am not going to expend my time for a dog and pony show for their political ramification, for their political agenda. That's my perspective. I don't like that's having a phone meeting versus a real meeting. We don't have the time as volunteers to keep taking hours and hours and hours out of with what are a couple of things from a few individuals versus like true county council. So anyway, my take. I don't know what anybody else thinks, so go ahead.
This is John. I'd like to supplement further what Kevin said, and then I will keep quiet. Number one, because of the various legal-based assertions that the county has made, for legal counsel to attend the Finance Committee on Thursday would not be appropriate. And the concern in particular is if people at the Finance Committee, let's say, expanded what we thought should be the construct of the meeting, which in my view is precisely what Sean just outlined. If it started to expand into expenditures from a year and a half ago and approvals for that and residency requirement and other things that have been raised by the county solicitor, that's not the forum in which those items should be discussed. My further additional supplemental comment ties back to something Kevin mentioned at the outset of his comments. And Mike, this is where I may, to the extent you can, would ask you to weigh in. Mike has had meetings along with Paul, I believe with County Executive McClure and Mr. Derdinger,
right,
really in the spirit of trying to, I'll say, reach non-adversarial resolutions to various issues that have just, say, surfaced over the last several months. And as Kevin said, my sense is, and this is where I'll shut up in a minute, perhaps you can just, at least nothing else, discuss that and basically provide input on whether or not, if there are going to be further discussions, let those play out rather than having something occur on Thursday that could possibly undermine the road, albeit maybe it's a soft road at this point, but the road you're going down, and I will keep quiet.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there'll be a second meeting or not. Paul and I came back. We met with Sean and met with John and shared, the results of that meeting. I guess I'm trying to put myself. When I chaired the airport authority, I made it a point that I regularly went to county council meetings and county commissioners meetings. I just decided it was important for us to be present and to be visible and to share our position and share updates. So, I would never be averse to a meeting with council. Although, I think right now we're in a more adversarial position than apparently than we've been in the past. But I think the reality is that the bad potentially back end is that the council can subpoena members of the authority to come to a meeting. I mean, that authority does exist, and it's not used often. But I remember it was used once, Peg, at some point in the
yes, it was.
In the past.
I hope we don't get to that point. I think Ron
that's
Heckman,
not a happy time.
Heckman stressed that nothing would be discussed at this finance committee meeting except finances. So whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I would say our meetings with county executive and by the way, I want to be absolutely sure that David, this meeting was appropriately advertised, and we are meeting. We met all the requirements for public notice. Is that right?
We did, and I went through John Lucius to make sure everything was appropriate.
Yeah, I don't want to get hits taken off. It concerns me a little bit that Paul, who I had a good relationship with, and Frank discontinued the phone conversation.
I just think it's Peg. I just think anything that they want to discuss as far as bills that aren't paid and so forth, you have to say, well, that's in litigation. Isn't that the standard answer for something like that? And where do we go from here? And that's what I think, anyway.
Yeah, I think the bills that are in dispute right now are de minimis compared to the entire cost of the project.
Right.
I mean, they're not to you, they're not to Sean and not to John. I mean, in the total context of the project.
Right.
The comment I'll share with you, and I shared with Sean and John Lucius and Paul Anthony. I met with John on Friday. With Sean on Friday. But
just to be clear, Mike, you and I have not met regarding your meeting with Charles Dertiger, and we have not met. We've talked, but we've not met.
Right. We've not met. We had a long time. We've been on the phone and so on. We had a conversation. I think certain things were apparent. Number one, they believe that the GPA should continue to do the things the GPA has done well. The loans, the small business development, the economic development things, the bonds, and so on, all are within the wheelhouse of something the authority has done exceptionally well for a lot of years. It's no surprise to anybody that they didn't think we should have gotten involved in the P3 project. They don't like the P3 project, but realize we're here. They said to us in no uncertain terms that they're committed to making all the milestone projects, all the milestone payments. They did say that they believe they've got the ability to renegotiate with Benish and oh my goodness, Krieger. And the five bridges and so on, they don't believe will be an issue. That's
Little. By the way, that's Little Creek Road, right, Mike?
Right,
Five bridges on Little Creek Road.
Right. It's 70. I forget those words once in a while. But I think and that was their discussion and their statement, and didn't debate it whatsoever. That's where we stayed. They believe that. Let me see. I don't think they would be concerned if the GPA took care of Sean's bill, and I've shared that with Sean. And I don't know the extent of your outstanding bills, John, and this is probably not the place to talk about that.
Right. And this is not about my bills, so I agree with you. This is okay. Go ahead, Mike.
So, and my read is that any additional bills that you accumulate, John, in the interim are going to be under the same not going to pay.
Not pay, right.
Right.
And Mike, if I may interject, that is another, what you just said, the point you made is something that Kevin raised in a letter with Melissa Rudis, to which Kevin has not yet received a response. Mm-hmm. And therefore, as Peg just said a few minutes ago, for me to go to the session on Thursday is just, in my view, an invitation to have a discussion about that, and it's simply not appropriate. Legally, it would not be appropriate for me to talk about that.
Yeah. I think for us not to respond only sticks one more stick in the water, only one more thing that's going to become the negative aspect of. So I cannot go. I teach a class on Thursday afternoons and Thursday evenings, so I cannot go. I don't know that I think we have to respond in some sessions. They would be happy to share information. I think I don't know as Ron Heckman is going to be a
Mike, can I just interrupt for a second? The meeting is actually Wednesday. The 20th.
Wednesday, yeah.
The 20th at 4 o'clock.
Okay, I thought it was the 21st.
No, it's the 20th. If you look at the letter says the 20th.
All right. I'm in King of Prussia all day, so I can't do that either. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, let's pick up on what Mike said for a moment. Mike indicated there should be a response, and I had recommended to the board in my earlier comments that is the conclusion that I've reached with Kevin. So if we agree that there should be a written response, the question, I think one of the questions the board has to answer is who should give that response. Kevin and I certainly can work on the framework of the response to make sure that we stay within the bounds of the legalities here, and we don't stub our toe on a privilege issue or something else. But the response, respectfully, I think should come from one or more members of the board, maybe two people sign the letter so it doesn't look as though one person is just giving his opinion. It's not my place to suggest who, but I guess what I'm saying is the letter came from somebody who is not an attorney, and I think the response should come from the GPA on behalf of the GPA from parties who are not attorneys. Because that's just, if the response came from Kevin, for example, I will ask you to consider whether or not that would be perceived negatively, because it now looks like we just put it into the legal bucket and the response is coming from an attorney in query whether that's the perception you want to create with the Finance Committee.
And I think, frankly, it ought not come from me because I'm trying to maintain kind of a non-biased, non-enemy position with the executive so I can keep lines of communication open.
Now,
why don't... Okay.
One option you have, this is something I just threw out kind of almost spontaneously. The letter could come from just the general purpose authority and state that this was a letter that was authorized to be sent, was authorized at a quorum of a board meeting to be sent by the general purpose authority, and you don't have anybody specifically sign it, or the four of you, since you constitute the quorum, all sign it. And Kevin, I'd like you to weigh in on this.
I agree with that.
As an example, here in our law firm, and Kevin, I think you may do the same thing, and most law firms do this. When I am asked to give a legal opinion on behalf of my law firm, I don't sign it in my individual name. The legal opinion is signed, we have typewritten the name of our firm, and then there's a handwritten signature of the name of our firm. So it shows that the firm, rather than any one individual, is really the party that is opining on the matter. And
So
go ahead.
What are you suggesting this letter would say? You were saying is no one's going to show up. I think Frank said he was intending to show up.
We absolutely have to show up. How does that look if we don't show up? That doesn't look very good at all. I think we should be going through these point by point, deciding which one of these we're going to answer, which ones we're not going to answer, and how we're going to answer it.
Good. Well, Peg, if I may supplement what you just said, and it ties back into what Sean said earlier. Number one, there will be as complete an answer as we can give with respect to the production of documents by providing the 3 CD-ROMs that I have had prepared. Okay.
Right.
Number two, with respect to the project and specifically finances,
right.
In my view, having Benish there to discuss the status of the project, to outline what's been paid to date, sometimes you hear the word WIP, work in process or work in progress.
Sure.
Benish can basically pull all that information together and give a complete update of what's spent, what the projections are for 2018 and beyond, which is, as you said earlier, Peg, this is about finances. What is not appropriate, and that's part of what they do. If you look at the job response, but Peg, what I think, what Kevin and I are saying is to get into questions about unpaid bills or query, Peg. Why are we going back to resolutions from 2016, early 2017? Why are we producing bylaws? Those have nothing to do with finances. So what I would envision is that the letter would be written in a way to say it would be, I'd like to think it could be written in the positive rather than the negative, namely saying, here are documents we're producing, here's what we're willing to do, and here's the information we're willing to provide so that you can have a complete, up-to-date report on not only the technical aspects, but really the finances in terms of the project. I mean, and I'd like to think that it's up to the Finance Committee, but it sure would be helpful if Mike Amelia attended the meeting, because he, for example, has been very involved, and Sean, I think you know this, in facilitating the payments for the permanent and temporary easements. I mean, if the Finance Committee is really looking for financial information about the project, that can be provided along the lines of what Sean described as what I'm saying. But to go back and say, why did you spend money in 2017 on this or that or whatever when those bills were approved, a year and a half ago? I don't know what purpose that serves with respect to anything. And as Sean said, it really starts to look not like a legitimate inquiry into the financial status of the project. It looks like something else. And Sean has indicated he's not going to attend. And the attorneys have indicated ethically they really can't attend. So I think the way we structure this is we let Benish, and I've had communications with Benish, take the lead on this, including the dollars. And if there's somebody from the authority who wishes to attend from the board, I'll leave that up to the board members. But that's my view, and I'll shut up.
But I think part of the project, part of it is all, and maybe I don't understand either, but letters of agreement. I mean, agreements, like if we were going out marketing this P3 project to other entities, and then money would come back to the GPA. I think that's some of their question too, is why were we marketing the P3 project?
Well,
maybe I don't understand, or maybe we weren't. I don't know.
Peg, I can comment a little bit on that.
Okay.
There were the P3 project, and Sean, you weigh in. The P3 project was publicized. It was publicized here in the Lehigh Valley. I can tell you that I went to the the Pennsylvania Association of County Commissioners.
Sure.
I went to Columbus, Ohio, to make a presentation to a national conference. What is lost in the picture are a couple of things. That process was being driven by the prior county administration.
Yes.
And the GPA did not make, and Sean, you weigh in on this, the GPA was not the party that made the decision to do that. Number two, to the extent that I'm sorry, is somebody back on?
Frank.
Hello?
It's Frank. Frank Pinnabone.
Frank, we lost you for a while.
Yeah, I'm back on. Bad spot.
Okay, and Peg, number two, I want to be very careful in what I state here for reasons we've indicated before. But I just have to say this. For example, when I went to Columbus, Ohio, at the invitation of Stan Rugas and John Brown,
yes,
I did not bill any of my time to anybody on that. That was all done basically on my own time as a favor to help put the GPA in the best light forward. But my point is, the decision whether to market this, quote, market this project, is something that the prior county administration seriously, and I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but that was a decision made in large part not by the GPA, but by the prior county administration. So to the extent, my point is, Peg, to the extent that there are matters that the prior administration made decisions with respect to and expended money with respect to, those are questions that respectfully the GPA is not in a position to answer.
Okay, well then I think that should be clarified, because I think that was the decision, and that has nothing to do with where we are right now. So,
that's correct.
And that's what I think should be stressed. Those were decisions in the past. Those bills, whatever bills were incurred there, are not part of the GPA's issues.
Correct.
Yeah. But as far as like when we had the website developed and got that stuff ready, Peg, we discussed this.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Sure, I'm sorry. And I really apologize. I'm still not familiar with everybody's voice. Can everybody just, before you get ready to speak, just to say who it is so I just know who I'm listening to, please? Sorry.
Yeah, this is Sean.
Okay.
Yeah, Peg, if you recall,
Peg Ferraro.
It goes back about a year, like probably a year and a half. Before, when we were in the process, the documents were done, there was a lot of hype about the P3 project. We knew there were a lot of costs involved. We discussed this as how does the GPA benefit from this in the long run, and it was discussed in an open meeting. It's on tape where we were
like, I understand that.
License our documents, and 20 other come in, and they want to all do P3 projects. Instead of them spending several $100,000 on legal, they could come and either pay some type of service fee or a licensing fee of, like, say, $50 or $100. That's when people go, how are you marketing this? Well, why? Because it's the first kind anywhere in the country, and there's a value to that. And people don't people don't understand that from a finance standpoint, that this is like a marketable security that we have.
Sure.
That's more fun.
By the way, to supplement what Sean just said, I actually am involved in a project where that issue is going to come up. And I say that issue, I'm talking, it hasn't come up yet, but it will. And where folks in an adjoining county want to do a major P3 project as part of a humongous development, and if the situation is appropriate and evolves, it is on my agenda to do precisely what Sean just outlined. We're not there yet. I'm not there yet, and I may not be there yet, but what I'm saying is what Sean has just outlined is not just theoretical. It's starting now to actually happen.
So then the GPA would realize they would be buying the rights or buying whatever. So the GPA would be getting money back on this, would be getting paid for it.
What would happen, and by the way, the GPA does have the copyrights, and the GPA always had the right to decide who would use the documents, including our firm. What I'm saying is, if this it involves both a private developer, it involves public entities up in the Poconos. If they, in fact, if their solicitor wants to use, or somebody asks me, can we use the documents in Northampton County, then what I would do is I would recommend that their solicitor, or if it's appropriate, I would come back to the board and say, look, they want to use these documents. Here's the background of all the project. Are you willing to license the documents, and if so, at what fee? Mm-hmm. This is a real project. In fact, to give you an indication of how real it is, none of this is privileged. It's going before what?
John.
What?
Sorry to be so loud, John. Stop on that project. That's none of our business.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sean. I just wanted to underscore your point.
That was
so, John, a quick question. This is Frank. Based on the copyright that you just mentioned, who owns the copyright? Who has the copyright? Is that the GPA or is that your law firm?
GPA.
The GPA. Okay, and so the GPA has received. Pardon me. The GPA has received the copyrights back.
The GPA is the lawful holder of the copyrights.
Okay.
And the GPA was always the party that could decide who could use the documents, including whether our law firm could use them.
Okay.
There was great misunderstanding on that point. I don't want to belabor it, but the GPA always had control over who could use the documents. And as Sean said, I don't want to continue on in that regard.
No. Okay, that answered my question.
I'm sorry. Just to clarify, and I'm really sorry, guys. Again, I don't want to slow you guys up, but I'm still new to a lot of this. So the actual physical documents, the GPA has possession of the actual copyright documents, correct?
Frank, please understand. A copyright, there's a difference between a document and a copyright. The copyright is what's called intellectual property that the GPA owns and is reflected as the owner in the U.S. Copyright Office in Washington, D.C. The documents, the actual physical documents, and this is another point that I am absolutely baffled about, the actual physical project documents, back in 2017 in January, when those documents were all executed, multiple bound copies of those documents were distributed throughout the county. There are probably 5 or 6 bound volumes that ended up in the county executive's office, the solicitor's office, the Department of Public Works, the DCED. And I am just, and I think I even sent Melissa Rudis another one earlier this year. When people are saying they haven't seen the documents, I am totally bewildered by that statement because they were distributed, what I'm saying in plain English, all over the place.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was unaware of that. I thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm in favor of having Kevin and John look at how to draft the response. I'm in favor of having Benish go, because they are the person managing the project. So if they truly want an update on the project, that's the person to give the update on the project. So, if somebody has a finance question for me specifically, happy to answer it. But when they write that they want an update, that they don't want a presentation, and then they say, would like to have the following documentation presented at this meeting, we'll give it to them on the desk. I don't know what they mean. Like, we're supposed to come and pull out a service agreement and walk through 10 items in front of them? Again, you said this letter was written by a non-attorney. It almost doesn't make sense to me the way they wrote this. But from my standpoint, they want an update. We'll send the appropriate people to give them the update. They want the documents. We'll give them whatever documents on the CD that have already been redacted without spending any more money. I see that would be in compliance. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are, but that's where I'm at.
My thought is, this is Frank again. My thought is, and that was Sean, correct, Sean?
That was Sean, yep.
Okay, great. So, and yes, I think Bennett should go to answer questions that pertain to them. However, just from what I'm gathering, there's just a lot of maybe misinformation or maybe people understanding, whatever it could be. I mean, I know there's a lot of new county members on the board now. We have a new county executive on the board. I'm new. Mr. Anthony's new. I don't disagree with anyone from the GPA, and I said I would be attending the finance meeting just to learn more. I mean, I obviously am in no position to answer anything about anything, but I think it would be good for somebody from the GPA to be there that could answer questions. I think a lot of the BS back and forth, if you will, could probably be put to bed if we have that dialogue and we're answering questions. There might be some questions that, for example, Don mentioned that there was copies all over the place. Well, I'd like to get a copy of that myself. I didn't know there was copies all over. That's good to know, and I'm sure there's probably other people that did not know there were copies all over the place. So I think having that open dialogue, maybe at this meeting, with someone from the GPA who is in a position to or has the knowledge to answer these questions, I think that could go a long way. And just sending Bennett, I feel it's just, in my opinion, it's just, a chess match. They make a move, we counter the move, but we're not getting anywhere. And I think we really, in my opinion, just from what I've seen so far, we need to have these discussions. We need to be clear. We need to make sure everybody understands what happened prior, what's happening now, so we can move on in a positive direction for the county.
Frank, when you were, before you came back on.
Yes.
We've had about a handful of people. Please tell us who joined the line most recently.
I'm sorry, I don't know if that was for me, but can somebody repeat that?
My phone died, so I'm on another phone, so I just had to sign in again. It's Peg.
Okay, Peg. We'll have a list of all the numbers.
What I just basically asked was if we could have representation from the GPA at the county finance meeting, just to answer or have a dialogue, answer some questions. I mean, I just learned that, the actual documents were all over the county courthouse. Well, maybe people don't know that. I didn't know that. And maybe those are little things that we could pick on that could turn this thing around and make it a lot easier to work everybody together for the common goal. So I'd like to have somebody in the college.
Yeah, I really think there should be representation there from the GPA. I think we can just answer questions of a general nature because I think people truly don't understand.
Right.
So I think what
I kind of agree with Peg. I'm reluctant to say no one will go. I'm reluctant to say that.
That's going to be
terrible. Having been on the other side of the table, as I say, I'm going to be out of town, so I can't. And that's convenient. But I'm reluctant to say we shouldn't be there. I don't have a problem writing a letter saying what we can share. I have no problem saying that Benish will be there. So
what I've heard so far is what I've heard so far, and I'm just making comments to try and keep things moving and make sure we stay crystallized. We know Mike won't go. Peg, you're on county council, so you're
and
really
I plan to be there. Right.
Okay. Sean is not going. We've said that it's not appropriate ethically for other reasons for attorneys not to go. So besides Benish, who's the face of the GPA at that meeting?
I think,
and I don't feel like
this is Frank again. Again, I'm going to be there. Obviously, I can't answer anything. I'm going really just to learn more for myself about everything. But you're right. Somebody should be there. And I mean, if questions get, too much or are not appropriate, they don't need to be answered. I mean, in my opinion.
Right.
But I think somebody should be there because some questions, like for example about documents. Hey, wait a minute. You guys think these documents are being privately kept? They've been all over the place. A lot of new board members, including the executive, might not know that, so that might help. But I definitely think somebody with knowledge should, in fact, be there.
And when they talk about intellectual property, I think we all understand intellectual property. So that's a different ballgame, and that's what money. The reason they were doing it's registered as intellectual property, so money comes back to the GPA if other entities wish to use this project. It'll be a way just like our bond money, or pass through for the bond money.
Well,
I think maybe I'm too simplistic. I know I'm too simplistic, but that's the way.
Peg, this is Frank again. I mentioned this in the first meeting, and again, I'm just hearing the remedial version, but it kind of makes sense to me as well. I mean, if we did something first and other people want to use it, why not recoup costs and try to generate extra revenue on it for other people?
Hey guys, this is Sean. My phone went off. My first battery died on my home phone at who will be the face of the GPA at the meeting. I didn't want to go conspicuously silent there. My phone literally died at that moment, so I missed the last minute of conversation. So whatever happened in the last minute, and we do have 11 callers on, so there's a handful that have not identified yet. So just a heads up.
11? Did you say 11 callers?
Yeah, I was the 11th caller. So we took a list of numbers.
Okay. By the way, just so everybody knows, there is a list of numbers generated from this phone call. A list of the phone numbers, not the individuals' names, and how long each of those individuals is on the phone. But I'd like to take a reality check here, given what Sean said. Sean said, I think, number one, you all agree there should be a written response. Number two, Sean indicated that Kevin and I should work on the framework of a written response, given the legalities involved in it. Number three, there seemed to be you seem to be going down a road of rather than having just one or two individuals sign the letter just be the response just be from the general purpose authority as a whole. I think that's appropriate, but others can weigh in. Number four, I think what you're saying is besides a written response and besides having Benish there, and Frank, before you got on the phone, I think, again, the thought was not only to have Benish there, Benish certainly could talk about the progress of the project from a technical standpoint, but what I can do is go back to Benish and basically I think Benish can do some sort of spreadsheet in terms of what the dollars spent to date are, what the projected expenditures are over the next X period of time. I also stated that Mike Amelie, who is the County Director of Public Works, he's the one who has been working with the County Department of Fiscal Affairs on having the checks cut to the various landowners who receive payment for granting permanent or temporary easements. So those dollars can be incorporated into this as well. So basically, what I'm saying is the Finance Committee can in fact get an update on the financial aspects of this project. Also, I think you were on, Frank, when I said we can provide CD-ROMs of all of the documents that were furnished previously, so we don't have to go through that laborious process again. And the real construct of the meeting, in a nutshell, Frank, would be to go there with our professional advisors, as Sean is saying, the people who are really managing the project day to day, and to give them complete information about the project and the dollars. As I said, and you may have been off the phone, Frank, the one thing the GPA cannot do, it's not in a position to do, it cannot answer questions about what transpired a year ago or 15 months ago or 2 years ago with respect to decisions made by the prior administration. It can't go to a meeting and do that and be asked questions, and because it doesn't know the answers, it wasn't involved in those decisions, and to be asked those questions just doesn't work.
Well, I think I respond to those questions.
John, and I understand. First of all, I agree with you when you said about Venice coming, and I agree with that 100%. As far as I know, there's going to be things that, or I'm assuming there's going to be things that will be asked that cannot be answered by a representative of the GPA, and I get that, respect that 100%. However, there are certain things that maybe I don't know what, but anything that was discussed by the GPA during previous administrations or currently that was done in public, any votes that were taken, those can be reiterated because, that's not privileged information. And anything that the board knows or the GPA, we have GPA members that have been on there 11, 13 years. So those are people that can share insight with, especially somebody like me who's just coming in, only been to 2 meetings. So that's why I feel it's important to have somebody there.
Frank, remember,
John, excuse me, this is Sean Donahue. Can I interject, please?
Please, go ahead.
I don't want to be rude and cut you off, John, but I would like to.
No, please do.
Because I've been sitting here listening now quietly for an hour and 15 minutes. We're going on an hour and 15 minutes. And I honestly feel like we're talking in circles. Mm-hmm. Okay? I really do. We're talking in circles. We've received a letter. We've all agreed that it warrants a response. So let's provide a response. If it's privileged information, we're not providing it. If it's non-privileged information, let's provide it. If it's privileged and it's already been redacted, provide it. Okay? Let's decide who's going to go. Let's decide who's going to answer questions, and let's move on. Frank, you're absolutely correct. Okay, I'm one of the people that has sat on this authority for 13 years or 14 years or 15 years. I don't even know at this point. But here's what I'm not going to do. I am not going to go back and pull out 14 years of minutes, 14 years of video recordings, which have probably been only for 3 years, rewatch everything, and recount for everybody who voted in favor and or against every single matter that we've taken, vote that we've taken with respect to this. That is not our job, okay?
Well,
that is not what any of us... Wait, let me
I'm not asking you. I'm not asking you. I think you're making it too much. I'm not asking you to do any of that. First of all, I don't expect you.
Hey, Frank.
This is Sean Langan. I'm holding the meeting. Let Sean Donahue finish. Thank you.
Frank, this is not directed at you directly. Okay, this is directed at the process. This is not Frank. This is not Sean Donahue to Frank Pinnabone personally. This is to the process. Okay. Because
I understand.
Here's what I have an issue with, okay? These are county council members, and with all due respect to Peg and with Mike as a former county council member, okay, they are their own entity, okay? So it's not my job. It's not your job, Frank. It's not our job. It's not our solicitor's job to go back and figure out what past county council members had presented to them voted on and made decisions to. It's not our responsibility to comment on what John Brown was thinking and what John Brown was doing as county executive. Just like today, it's not appropriate for us to comment on what County Executive Lamont McClure wants to do as the county. So I think we all have to take a step. Let's simplify this. Let's respond. Let's provide the documents if they're not privileged. If they're privileged, let's not respond or not reply and say that's privileged information. We're not providing it because it's privileged. If it's privileged and it's already been redacted, then and we can send it, then it's privileged. It's been redacted. Here it is. But we can't, we can't go back and we can't be the ones to research everything and answer their, questions to edit. They have to do some of this on their own. But I absolutely 100% agree that we have to try to assist, so that this is not an adversarial situation. It's become an adversarial situation because there's a lot of grenades that have been lofted that are based into the room that are not factual. Okay, and there's a lot of I think there's a lot of misunderstandings that are taken place. So for example, and then I'm going to make one last point, and then I'll be quiet. So go back to the intellectual. Let me take a step back. One of the big issues in all of this is the fact that there's been roughly $800,000 to $1 million in legal fees spent on the P3 project. Okay,
that's not correct. Just for the record, that is not a correct statement.
Okay. Well, what is the real number with respect to
Let's
the P3
not get
project?
into that. The reason I interjected, Frank, and I'm just going to say this as a general comment. There's a lot of information about this project that is flat out incorrect, that was apparently put out there by people who never read documents, who didn't even know documents were distributed, who never looked at any specific information. I just want to make that for the record. That statement that you just made is absolutely incorrect. I think you ought to pick up on where Sean was.
Now, hold on, John. Record, you said Frank, but Frank didn't just make that statement, right?
I know you did. You heard it, Frank. You heard that was out there in the public.
That was, you made my point, John. You're absolutely right. I'm not saying those are actual numbers, but that's why. And I don't want anybody to go back 14 years and break everything down. You're right. That's too much. We don't get paid to do it. We shouldn't do it. But something like that, where somebody could say, "No, that's not true. That's not what happened." You can put a stop to that. That's what I'm talking about, having a representative there speaking. 800 to $1 million? No, not true, not close. And we can stop it, stop the rumor.
Frank, I'd like you to pick up on what Sean said. It is not our job to go to a meeting, incorrect information that is factually false, that was put out there by people who knew it was factually false.
All right. Okay, well,
I
can I finish?
I agree. I'm sorry.
I'd just like to make one point. Let me please make a point, okay? Because all of our time is valuable here. And again, I feel like we're talking in circles, and I'm going to let me do this as a what if scenario. If the legal fees were $800,000, and John, I've clearly heard you say they're not. I'd like then, at some point, I think we have to be able to say, what were the exact legal fees spent with respect to the P3 project? And that's not, we don't need that answer right here, right now. But let's just say it was $800,000. This is a $38 million project, okay? So $800,000 of legal fees for a $38 million project, okay, for the first time that it's ever been done, is actually reasonable. Which might be hard for some people to understand, but it's basically 2% of the overall project cost for a project that's never been done before in the in the county, and maybe it's only the second time in the state, if I remember correctly. So take that back now, and then look at the decision that was made in a public meeting that was recorded, and there are minutes, attesting to who voted in favor of and or who didn't vote in favor of. Okay, But a decision was made where we said, okay, it was explained to us by the solicitor that all of these documents were being copyrighted, that it was the general purpose authority who had the copyright authority when these things, the proper documents get filed in the office in Washington, D.C., and that basically if someone went to go do this in the future, and John, please correct me if I'm wrong, if someone went to do this in the future and they could come to us and they could say, hey, we understand that you've done this before, and we'd like you to act in this capacity for us in our municipality, in our county in the state of Pennsylvania, and we're willing to pay a fee to you to do that. And that's, and I don't think that was done consciously, and that was all done in, public meetings with votes. And there's nothing wrong with it. And it was viewed as that's a way for the general purpose authority and the county and indirectly then the county to recoup for fees that were spent on this particular project. So I think, and now I'll stop. So this was done with nothing but good intentions. I think what's misunderstood is that, people feel that some of us or all of us, are personally benefiting from this particular project, which is not necessarily the case. And I'll be quiet now.
And listen, that goes back to my original point. I'm not in a position to say anybody benefited or didn't benefit or whatever. And this P3 could be the best thing and been done the absolute best way and the best way for the county. That's great. But I disagree with John when he says it's not our responsibility to put out accurate information after people put out wrong information. Well, whose responsibility is it? We need to correct that. We need to say, no, that was wrong. You got wrong information or you put out wrong information. This is the truth. It's up to us to educate everybody on what's going on. Just because we're not creating the negative rumors doesn't mean we shouldn't correct them and give people the truth. I don't know what happened with the P3. I don't know. I'm learning as I go. Personally, like many other people who don't know, I'm not in a position to say anybody did anything wrong, but you have people saying yes, people saying no. Well, explain to me what happened. And I think we can alleviate so much tension and misinformation just by coming out and saying, no, it wasn't $1 million, it was this. Or, no, we didn't do that. We had a public meeting. Go back and check the minutes. I mean, I think that would just...
And we can say... And it was the previous administration. And Sean Donahue, Sean, are you going to plan on being there on Wednesday? Can you be there with us?
I'll be there. This is Sean Langan. I'm going to go because, you know what? I'm going to go back and start at square one with them.
Okay. And what about Sean Donahue?
Peg, I was not planning on being there. On being there. I will, through the course of this phone call, I'm reconsidering whether or not I will go. So, someone please remind me it's on Wednesday in 2 days. What is the time? Is it 4 p.m.?
4 o'clock on Wednesday. And I know because I know Lori feels that she can talk to you, and she's known you for a long time. She mentioned you. That's why I said that.
Sure. My apologies. I cannot be there. I'm with the client in King of Prussia, so I cannot be there.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just answered all your questions. Congratulations. Seriously. You've now decided a letter. Kevin and I will do the framework of the letter. I understand it will be signed by the General Purpose Authority, not any one individual. We will have Dave... after the letter is drafted, it will be circulated. We'll have Dave send it to Heckman as the administrative service provider rep for the authority, and Sean Langan and Peg and Frank will be at least 3 of the GPA board members at the meeting on Thursday. I will provide to you, Dave, CD-ROMs that you can forward to Mr. Heckman with all the documents. A description, the response letter will allude to those, of course, And then, as we said, you're able to, and I'll circle back with Benish to make sure that particularly financial information is pulled together with the county executive to the extent necessary. And basically, you can answer questions. If any of you want more bound volumes of the documents, Dave, what I will do between now and Wednesday, I'll get our clerical people to make more copies so that if anybody wants them at the Finance Committee meeting, they can have them.
Excellent.
I have a question.
John, I'd like to get a copy of those documents when we were speaking regarding the copyrights and everything, those documents you mentioned. I'd like to get those. I don't need them by the Finance Committee meeting because I'm sure it's going to take me a long time to get through it. But whenever you can, I'd like to try to get a copy to start reviewing.
That's fine.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
This is Sean Donahue. I have a question about Thursday's meeting with the number of people attending.
Wednesday.
I'm sorry, Wednesday's meeting. I've already heard Sean Langan, Mike Dowd, Peg Ferraro. So if I show up as I'm sorry, and Frank.
Mike Dowd will not be there. Mike Dowd will not be there.
I'm sorry, Mike. My apologies. So Peg, Frank, Sean Langan. That's 3. We're a quorum at 4, I believe. So if I show up, are we considered to be a quorum at that point and having a meeting that is subject to sunshine laws or whatever it's called?
Well, you'll be at a public meeting, so I don't think that'll be a problem.
No, I don't believe you. Sean, I don't believe.
I just want to be sure.
No, it's a great question.
We're not having a meeting.
No, I'm not concerned that, Sean, I'm not concerned that there's somehow a violation of the Sunshine Law because it's not a meeting of the Board of Directors of the GPA. It's a response to an invitation. And by the way, if you look at the letter from Councilman Heckman carefully, he actually invited the entire board to show up at the meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to be sure because
great question.
Thank you.
So in fairness to everybody on the phone call, you've been once again more than generous with your time. I recommend that perhaps somebody make a motion just so we have it on the record. But before I do, Kevin, is there anything that you want to add or comment upon based on what you've heard over the last 40 minutes or so?
I think I covered it at the beginning. I would just say that, when it comes to, I think in the draft of the response letter, we can cover my concerns, which are, I'll call them defensive, given the litigation issues that the county has raised. And it will cover the scope of the things that I think are inappropriate for people to comment on, given the threat of litigation by the county. If anybody has questions about that, obviously they should feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to go over that. I don't want to get into a detailed back and forth on this call about that because of privilege concerns.
Right. So what? And Dave, I can make sure that I get to you bound volumes, the CD-ROMs. I also owe you some information with respect to the right-to-know law request, so I can make sure that we get those to you. I would suggest that the board consider now having a motion made, duly seconded, just for the record that there will be a written response. There will be, it will be written with the input of legal counsel, that the board is responding, that the board will have representatives there, that the board will request Benish to be there to provide both technical and financial information, something along those lines. And I'm trying to recap everything I heard.
This is we have Krieger motion to that.
We have one before we do that, Frank. John, I was trying to ask a question. Should we have Krieger there as well with Benish or no? Would you suggest we give them the option or no?
Well, Kevin, you may want to comment. As Kevin said much earlier on, he reached out to Jim Kutz. One thing that we could possibly do, we've indicated that legal counsel should not be there. But Sean, one option is for Benish to reach out to their counterparts at Krieger, whether it's Jim Marzolino or maybe Tony Bambos, who's been kind of the day-to-day point of contact. And I will also, if you have no objection, I will suggest to Benish that it ask Mike Amelie to attend.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we have a motion by Frank regarding authorizing the letter and our attendance.
I'm sorry, this is Frank. I just have one question. So, John, Lucius, you are not going to be there?
It's not appropriate for me to be there, Frank, because there are legal issues that are unresolved to which the county solicitor's office has not responded to Kevin, and I don't want to be there to answer questions about those.
Let me just ask, I don't know.
Nor will, hey, Frank, just to be clear, also, we as board members aren't going to answer questions on things that are waiting on legal responses from my standpoint.
I understand, but my question is, they have counsel there. The GBA is going there representing the GBA. Shouldn't we have legal counsel there as well?
No,
I mean,
no. They want a project Frank, right? They want a project update, right? That's all they want.
No, I don't think we need legal counsel.
That's fine. I mean, this isn't a setup. That's fine.
I don't think going there armed aids communication, to be frank.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean it as armed, but I understand. That's fine.
Okay.
We have a motion. We have a motion by Mr. Pittibone. Do we have a second?
Peg will second it.
Ms. Ferraro. Okay. Langen, yes. Dowd?
Yes.
Donahue?
Yes.
Pittibone?
Yes.
Mr. Anthony, did you ever hop back on? No response. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Motion carries. Okie doke. Very good. Very good. Next up, Administrative Service Provider, Northampton County GPA. We had looked at this before months ago. We had put together the detailed spec on what the responsibilities are. We're at a point where, as we have noticed of late, we're down to Dave Hughes and a secretary. Previously, we used to have the director, the authorities administrator, then we had Dave, and we went from 4 people. We went from 4 people to 2 people. So, this is just something we'd like to discuss on a go-forth basis. Also, from the standpoint that, the mishandling of information, the mishandling of our documents, our emails, our stuff is commingled with the county. These are all things that should not be done and continue to be done under having the county as our service provider. So this is something, I would like to see us find somebody better equipped to handle this stuff. And, I'll leave it out.
By the way, this is another example where an RFP could be issued very easily. Again, the RFP does not bind the authority to anything in terms of procuring alternate services, and it could possibly be a good measuring stick and a good informational tool for the board at a future meeting to pick up on what Sean just said and decide what it wants to do.
Yeah, for Frank's edification, Frank, we pay like $50-some thousand a year. Not only do we not spend taxpayer money, we actually give money back to the county on an annual basis to fund a portion of the salary of the people that do our work. So, we're at a point where, imagine if you're cutting grass and you're paying for 5 employees, but only 2 are showing up every day, but you keep paying for 5 employees. It's not a good scenario. So, that's where we're at right now. And I didn't bring it up at the meeting when I just authorized that last quarterly billing, but we've had no staffing increase to fill the voids where people that were pulled. Like, like Mark Putney and et cetera.
The one comment I'll make, and Sean alluded to it, the record keeping procedures with respect to GPA records really needs to be addressed. Again, there was a lot of public commentary about the work needed to respond to the right to know law requests. That was driven in large measure because GPA records were not properly segregated from county records. And legally, both from a legal standpoint and a business standpoint, that cannot continue. It needs to be addressed somehow, some way, and I think going through the RFP process can be part and parcel of that process.
Initially, the whole aspect of this, the partnership between the department and the GPA was all part of a partnership where one hand took care of the other, and we worked in concert. And so I don't think we really minded the additional money flowing back to the county because it was part of a way we could promote economic development in the county. We saw that as part of our activity. I think at the moment I see there's nothing wrong, as we do with all services, to consider on looking for issuing an RFP and find out what the market is. I mean, we'd be fools in some regard not to do that.
And the IDA did this a couple of years back. They ended up going to LDDC, which I'm not suggesting or recommending. But I'm just saying they did the same thing. They went out and said, "Hey, we're gonna find our own person or agency to fulfill this role in a better way." So the way I look at it is it's something that should be done. So,
guys, this is Frank again. Just to be clear, we're talking about what Mr. Barron proposed at our last meeting, correct?
No.
No, not at all.
You were provided, Frank. You were provided last week an administrative services provider attending County General Purpose Authority document. Just take a look at that. That'll show you kind of what services the county provides to us.
I'm moving, so I'm missing a lot. Okay, all right, we're good.
Yeah.
So this is Sean Donahue, and again, this is Frank to try to help you out and be respectful of the fact that you're kind of drinking from the fire hose, as they say right now, with information that's being thrown at you. The Administrative Services Agreement, as I recall, provides that the Department of Community and Economic Development provides certain services to the General Purpose Authority. Historically, that has included, at various times, an executive director, a grant, and some of this is what Sean Langen said earlier, like a grants administrator, a secretary, and call it a finance specialist, which would be Dave Hughes. And they've done various things for us. So I think there's been anywhere between 4 and 5 employees that have provided collectively services to us. I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, that we reimburse the county for 25% of the collective salaries and benefits of those people.
I think that's right, Sean.
And then, so to Sean Langen's point that he made earlier, we're now at the point where certain employees of the county that were required to provide services to us under that agreement have been pulled, and we're still paying for them. So, so that's what this particular issue is kind of about. So what we're saying, and then layered on top of that is the fact that information is effectively being commingled. Information has been disseminated improperly, and so therefore, we're making the recommendation that we're making, which is let's send out an RFP or an RFQ or a combined RFP and RFQ to get responses from others that may be able to provide this service to us, and we can see on our own if there's a value or there's not a value, and make an informed decision as to whether or not we should be making a change or renegotiate or quote unquote renegotiate with the county.
Yes. No, just another way, Frank, to tell you what good partners we were. We we paid for Mark Hartney's certification in the field of economic development. We sent him to seminars, paid all of his expenses and so on, because we thought that would accrue to the benefit of the entire county.
Yeah, correct. Very good point, Mike.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, what you just said, I mean, that makes sense. And, yeah, RFP, let's see, how it benefits each other.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the RFP for issuance?
I will make the motion. This is Sean Donahue.
Motion by Mr. Donahue.
I'll second. That's Mike.
Second by Mr. Dowd. I'm in favor. Mr. Dowd?
Yes.
Ms. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Pittibone?
Yes.
Anyone else come back on the line? Mr. Anthony, Mr. Schiavone? Okay, so we have 5. Very good. That motion carries.
Sean, this is Dave. Do you want me to send the current administrative services agreement out to the board members?
Yeah, if you would like to do so. I think it's captured within the job description, but for those that aren't familiar with it, that's fine. That would be fine to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we finally come to an adjournment after an hour and 40 minutes.
Yes, of a day that we were supposed to be a quick call. Okay. Hey, Dave. Just to be clear, hey Dave, that request for services for service provider for for administrative services has nothing to do with your work at all. You've done a fantastic job. We're not looking if it's because of you in any way. I just want to be clear on that, because this is a recorded meeting and it's open. I don't want somebody to assume that Dave's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. Dave has done a phenomenal job picking up the ball when everybody else in the department basically left him. So, we appreciate your and Sarah's work, and you'll continue to, be there for us. So, anyway,
thank you. Thank you very much.
This is John. I will just say that I wish I could clone Dave Hughes. What Sean said, I echo in spades.
David, it sounds great for us. I have no
okay, thank you. Thank you all for jumping on. Do we have a motion?
Thank you, everybody.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, hey, listen, this is Mike. I'm at the motion. Sean Langan, could you give me a call later on today, please?
Yeah, sure, Frank. Yep. All right, you have my cell, Frank. You have my cell. Call me at your leisure.
Okay. All right.
I have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Dowd. Second.
I think Frank actually moved.
Oh, Frank moved. Okay. Seconded by who? Mike second. Okay. I'm in favor. Mr. Dowd.
Aye.
Yay.
Ms. Ferraro.
Aye. Yes.
Yep. Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
Mr. Pittibone.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Yep.
See you. Bye-bye.